For a lot of Formula One fans, the first private Barcelona test for 2026 left a lot of untold answers, particularly for all of the individual teams and fans of the teams and drivers, and Ferrari is no exception. Well, in this video, I'm going to be breaking down the behind the scenes of how things went for Ferrari in that private test, from how the car has been birthed, how it was out on track, to what they were doing throughout the 3 days of testing they had, and also what the drivers' feedback was on the SF-26. So without further ado, let's jump right in and go over everything we know about Ferrari's private test in Barcelona. But before we get into this deep dive behind the scenes look at Ferrari's test, I'm running a competition throughout the pre-season. Now all you've got to do to be in with a chance of winning this picture book from Ferrari from the 98 season, which has a photo of Michael during the presentation of that year's car, you just have to be subscribed to the channel, leave a comment in this video, and I will announce the winner with a community post. Right, let's get on with Ferrari's pre-season test behind the scene look. And we're going to begin this with the birthing of the SF-26. Now, from what we see and what we've been told, everything seems to be working quite well. There has been no anomalies reported and found during the 3 days of testing, and its birthing period has gone very well by all accounts. Neither Hamilton or Leclerc throughout the 3 days of testing performed performance runs. We'll have to wait for Bahrain. More than likely, I would suggest the second Bahrain test to get an indication of where Ferrari and all of the other teams stack up in terms of doing actual qualifying sims and so on and so forth. But with that being said, we do know that the next line of evolution within the SF-26's aerodynamic package is going to be prepared for these upcoming 2 Bahrain tests. And I think we're going to see a huge evolution as a result of that with regards to the pecking order within the teams. I know for a fact this test that is just transpired in terms of the package they had is very much obsolete. Months and months behind what they currently have in the wind tunnel back in Maranello. I believe the one we saw in Barcelona is at the bare minimum 6 months behind what they currently have. So there is a huge amount of lap time to be gained from these new packages as and when Ferrari decide to implement and put them on the car for Bahrain. There was also no negative surprises for either the drivers or the teams throughout that outing in Barcelona, unlike say that of the 2025 pre-season tests when they very quickly discovered there was loads of issues and they were well behind their competitors. The car even surprisingly seems better than observers initially thought. And in the Barcelona test, both Leclerc and Hamilton were able to complete the planned program that the team had without any reliability issues. As we know, all the customer teams which are using Ferrari engines in 2026 suffered no reliability problems, and it was the same for Ferrari. So huge levels of mileage and huge levels of reliability, which is of course the positive aspect in terms of engine. The 432 laps which Ferrari completed have allowed the engineers to return to Italy with just over 2,000 kilometers covered, just behind that of the pace-setting Mercedes team. That is a huge amount of data gathered which they can then extrapolate and learn from back in base. This can be used to further input into the data with regards to the current versions in the wind tunnel, but also in terms of what they can do with setup when they arrive in Bahrain, because they would of course done a little bit of experimentation with regards to the setup and the preferences both drivers have, and what they learned and what they felt throughout those 3 days of testing when they were in the SF-26. I think it's going to be a huge, very busy time in Maranello for all of the people there, literally making sure that they can hit the track running and doing everything once again they want to in Bahrain. And just overall, they were doing a lot of electronic tests as well as of course mechanical setup work, seeing what settings work better than others, essentially. It was a glorified engine rollout and essentially a mechanical and setup thing. There was no performance runs in any regard. So even if you saw Ferrari at the top of the time, surprisingly, that wasn't with say 40 kilograms or 30 kilograms of fuel on board. It was not the case at all. Now, some areas of importance which were running into what you could say teething problems. Those were the new front suspension designed for the new 26 car, which features a far more aggressive approach to it. Of course, also a re-switching back to a pushrod layout instead of a pull rod configuration. But also the steering wheel of the SF-26, as we saw in the post-season in Abu Dhabi, as I made on my other channel, there was a new Ferrari steering wheel debut there. Further refinements have been made and the finalized version was put out onto the car for Barcelona. Now, both of these aspects needed adjustments to resolve an issue, particularly the power steering, which the drivers had complained about for quite a while now, and the indications were understandable on a conceptual new car. They provided reassurance in Spain thanks to a few corrections were made in between Fiorano, their shakedown, and that in Barcelona. So the initial problems both drivers had with the power steering seems to have been rectified in between these two events, which is fantastic to know. Now, the million-dollar question, how does the SF-26 and just in general this new generation of Formula One handle from a driver perspective? And this is a really interesting point in the video to discuss. So the car, as we would imagine, handles in a completely new and different way from 2025 and the ground effect era of Formula One. That was to be expected. There are huge differences between the two eras. That is in both the driving style and how you have to drive the cars and how you have to adapt your driving style to them, as well as the management of all of the systems and of course the energy management. Now, if you want to know why I believe Hamilton may have a much better time in 2026, I made a video on the channel going over his driving style and how I believe he's going to have a much smoother and happier time. If you want to watch that video, there'll be a card in the top right hand corner of this video for you to watch. So the feeling at the moment, though, having said all of that, remains neutral, but there is a feeling of relief on both sides of the garage and of course overall within the Ferrari outfit. I've even heard, and this is from Lando Norris, in qualifying they're going to have to lift off massively before the corners to kind of reharvest the energy to actually even finish a lap at full pace. So what drivers have to do is going to feel very, very alien. Can you even imagine, say you play the Formula One games as I have for many years up until the last year. You go straight into the corners on the 100-meter board marking, right? And you hit the brakes and then you fly into the corner. That is not what you're going to be doing in the Formula One games, let alone in real life. You're having to lift off from the throttle far ahead of the actual normal phase of when you would in the previous generations. That is to recover energy for the energy management and the use throughout the lap. And then, of course, you have to then start applying the brake. So a very big difference. And to wrap things up from an engine perspective, the results were positive to the team's objectives. The engine underwent a major shakedown without a single hitch. The engine teams have more confidence after Barcelona, but of course no one knows the competitive order as yet because it was all about testing, reliability, getting as much mileage out of those engines and stress testing it. So all in all, there you have what Ferrari were doing throughout the pre-season private test in Barcelona. A lot of the groundwork has been laid behind closed doors for all of the teams. The drivers have a relative understanding of the differences between the previous generations and this one in terms of what they have to do to adapt to this new generation of Formula One. The team have a better understanding of the car mechanically and setup wise, and have learned a great deal about their engine from a reliability standpoint. Now all that remains is a huge, vast array of programs to get through in Bahrain across the 2 tests. Start to put loads more performance onto the car with the upgrade packages which are planned, and of course begin to work on the performance and setup of the cars for both drivers across the next 2 pre-season tests, which will be televised for us to watch. Right guys, I'm going to wrap the video up here. Hope you've all enjoyed it. If you have, do leave a like on the video down below. Hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications for all future Formula One content on here on this channel. Right, enjoy your weekend, and I will catch you all across the next week with some more F1 videos. See you shortly.